Hey, so this is a build that I think has been flying under the radar for quite some time. It's been incredibly smooth to play, it's got that one button playstyle which I love, and it's just been a really chill time. I'm of course talking about the cast while channeling CI Whispering Ice Trickster. It rolls right off the tongue. Created by Kelvynn over on the forums. He's been maintaining this build for years now, and this league I decided to try it out. I wasn't even sure I was going to play this league in softcore, but a friend of mine convinced me that I should, and yeah, this is what I've been playing. I've gotten to level 97 on this character without, doing 5 ways or anything like that, and it's been buttery smooth. This is an intelligence stacking build. I have over 2,000 intelligence, and that is the core stat that we need for this build. That's because we are using the Whispering Ice. Whispering Ice is a staff. It's like level 36 or something that you need to have. And what it does is it grants you the skill Ice Storm. Ice Storm casts these little icy projectiles, kind of like Firestorm, the old one, but it's cold. It scales with intelligence, so if we hover over here, it deals 5 to 7 base cold damage per 10 intelligence. So we need a ton of intelligence. You'll notice I've got intelligence over here, I've got intelligence over here. Here, every single thing has intelligence except for the boots, because the boots are important to let us cyclone at the same speed that we are moving. So basically the whole point of this build is you just spin around, and as you're spinning around, ice is falling from the sky and killing everything. And it's super smooth. As you can see on screen, hopefully I'm putting some good background footage up there. I've also got tons of Herald explosions, in case you're wondering which MTX that is, because I know if you're like me, then you actually do care about the Heralds more than anything. The Heralds are like super satisfying. Here it is, Automaton Herald Effect. Highly recommend that. It just makes everything look so colorful and super fun. So let's go over how the build actually works. So we already went over the Whispering Ice. You're going to want 2 of them, because one of them is for when we are actually just mapping and we're spinning around and casting the Cyclone and all that. And then the other one is we weapon swap. You just hit X, and now we are self-casting the Ice Storm, and this does like more than like double damage compared to the Cyclone one. So this is for bosses. So if you're doing, Maven or Heater or any of those guys, or even just the map boss at the end of the map, it can be a lot faster to just self-cast this. You just stand still and cast this and you do a ton of damage. So, alright, so we talked about the staff. So you're going to want to have 6 socket. They don't need to be linked, except for on your Cyclone one, you do want to have Cyclone and cast while channeling linked together. Those 2 need to be linked together. If they're not linked together, it's not going to work, which is kind of weird. So look, let's say if I put this here and that there, now my Cyclone is just cycloning and there is no ice. So you really need to have cast while channeling and Cyclone linked together. The rest does not matter. These could all be individual sockets, it would be totally fine. And then for the other staff, it does not matter at all. I'll go over the gem links and all that later, but for now I just want to go over the gear. So that's the staff. Then the important boots are the Stampede. This makes it so that your movement speed is 150% of its base value, so you just have a constant move speed, because normally if you're cycloning you actually have a bit of a move speed penalty, but with these boots you don't. I will say that one of the cons of this build is that you can never go faster than this unless you have an acceleration shrine. Yeah, so you're kind of stuck at this speed. If you find that this looks kind of slow, then you probably won't want to play this build. Also, now's a good time to mention that I don't actually think that it's worth swapping to this build now, this late into the league. I don't think this is like a super endgame boss or like legit endgame build that you dump 200 divines plus or like a mirror into. You absolutely can, and you'll get great results. But because of this limited move speed, and because the damage cap I think is relatively low compared to something like Lightning Strike or Molten Strike, those kinds of builds, I actually don't think it's super worth it. But as a league starter, potentially for next league, then that's where I think that this build shines. Because I took this from 0 chaos all the way to where I am now, having beaten pretty much everything in the game except for a few of the Ubers, because honestly I suck at the Uber fights. It's otherwise really good, and can do pretty much all content. Really fun because you can actually run more or less any mods. The only ones I'm not running are LE Reflect, but I could just as easily change a few points around to be able to get LE Reflect over here. So it's also an option to do, but anything else you can do, no regen, like all the T17 mods, I don't even care. The petrification, it doesn't even matter. You can let yourself get petrified because you don't get petrified. It's great. Where was I? Gear. Okay, boots. Yeah. The other good thing on these boots is is the cooldown recovery. This lets you use Frostblink more often because, like I said, one of our weaknesses is our movement, so having a lower cooldown on Frostblink is a great thing to have. Next up, I was using an Ascendancy early on, which just gives 120 stats to all stats, so to your intelligence, strength, and dexterity. And then I had that anointed with the node Tranquility. Tranquility gives you increased maximum energy shield and Transfiguration of Soul, which makes it so that increases to maximum energy shield also apply to spell damage. So you're just getting a lot of damage from it, basically. Eventually, I replaced that with this bad boy over here. What's great about this is that mod that says 13% increased intelligence. This can go a bit higher, but I'm fine with that. So that mod, in combination with the 1% increased damage per 15 intelligence, that is a lot of damage that you're getting from adding this in. The other stats on there don't really matter so much. The extra 36 int is nice, but you know, you fit that wherever you can, if you can. Also, I went for the strength and dex base on purpose because I am starved for strength and dexterity. You'll notice that I need 180. That's because this body armor we're using requires 173 dexterity just to be able to equip it in the first place. This is the best body armor we can get, necrotic armor, so we need a lot of dexterity. So that's where I got it, on my amulet. Then we can take a look at the belt. The belt is super important and really not that expensive. You need a synthesized belt with the increased intelligence mod. I believe this goes, 13 to 15% normally, but then with the attribute catalysts on there, it goes up to 18, so you want to get that. And then I think I just hit it with some, some essences until I got like A resistance and strength on there. I think it was doing the intelligence essences, the spite ones. This belt is like really not that expensive. Something like this. 3 divines. I believe I crafted this for like less than 1 divine early on. Let's just see, like, just the base is how much? 100 chaos, exactly, yeah. Totally affordable. Let's go over the gloves. The gloves are actually not that special. You just want intelligence, a lot of energy shield, and then some resistances or dexterity, depending on where you're fitting that in the rest of the rare items of the build. Also, you want to hit it with that Eldritch currency to give it the 3% increased damage per 100 int, and the chance to unnerve for 4 seconds on hit. I have 25%, but like even if you had 15%, that's totally fine. I was using these for like 2.5 weeks, and these are nearly just as useful. Honestly, you get like a bit more energy shield, an extra 1,000 energy shield from having that, but these were still pretty good. Those were like 50 chaos. The helmet is pretty neat. A lot of energy shield, intelligence, and then the 8% increased intelligence. Ideally, I would have hit 10% increased intelligence with that, but I got unlucky with my Hunter's Exalted Orb and got the lower tier mod. By the way, I should have mentioned this way earlier. Kelvynn's forum guide is excellent and has crafting steps for like literally every piece of gear that you need to craft. The only one he doesn't have for is the body armor, because it is hard to craft this. This is a lot of luck involved in getting a high energy shield and evasion rating on your body armor, as well as getting other useful stats. Definitely go check out that forum guide. The link will be in the pinned comment and the description, so easy to find. Then rings, you just want a lot of int, maybe some dexterity, some resistances. You'll notice I'm using these mirrored ones that you get from the reflecting mists. I didn't craft these myself or anything, just buy them like this. They're super cheap. I think they're both like under, I want to say under a divine. 1 divine, you can buy one just like it. And here, 15 chaos. Yeah, these are super cheap. You could upgrade to a helical ring and then have a Calandrous touch on the other ring. Like, you get like 180 int on here and like 40 to all res and even some dexterity. That would be nuts. That would probably cost you an arm and a leg though. These are dirt cheap in comparison. Lastly, the body armor. Kind of went over it a little bit. Intelligence, a ton of evasion rating and energy shield. This is super important because we are a trickster and we benefit from having lots of evasion rating on our body armor because it gives us a ton of extra maximum energy shield. And I know I didn't mention it, but we are going CI. We are Chaos Inoculation, so we want lots of energy shield. 14,000 ES is where I've landed, but I've seen people on PoE Ninja with like over 20,000 ES. It's totally possible. Yeah, and this node here, in combination with these kinds of body armors, are what make it possible. You want as much evasion on here and energy shield as possible. Intelligence, 7 divines for something similar. With the resists, it's a lot more, but you could fit something else there instead if you're getting your resists elsewhere. Also, if you have the space for it, you could craft on instead body armor, the increased attributes. Where is it? Here, 6% increased attributes. This is like a hillock craft from the Unveils, and that'll give you more damage, but I need the resistances, so here we are. Also here we use some Eldritch currency to make it so that we have the 10 fizz taken from hits as chaos damage. Now we could actually change this for like 1% less damage per 100 int that we have, something like that, and that would be good too, but I just got this one and kept it there. And then the crit multi for spell damage, really nice, just extra damage because we are getting lots of crit. That's it for these types of gears. We'll go over the flasks real quick. Corundum flask, this makes it so that when we get stunned, we can't get stunned for a little while. And I got the stun block recovery mod on there so that when we do get stunned, it doesn't last very long. Very useful because there is no real great way of solving stun on this build. We are starved on jewel sockets, so getting the stun corruption or whatever would be like a pain in the butt. Actually, I'm not even sure if that's still in the game. They changed the implicits. And then Diamond Flask, we are crit and we want to be critting as often as possible, so this is just a crit Diamond Flask. I've got the gain 3 charges when you are hit, but I guess ideally you'd want the one that gives you more charges when you do crit, but this is fine as well. A Bottled Faith, this just gives us a lot of damage, a lot of crit, always good on crit builds pretty much. Rumi's Concoction, this just gives us a little bit of block, an extra tiny bit of defense that we don't necessarily need. You could swap that up for something else if you wanted to, but I've been using it for a long time and hasn't let me down. And then I've got a Vessel of Vinctar. This shocks nearby enemies, so they take, I think it's like 10% increased damage, which is just a lot of extra damage that you get to do. However, you are shocked when you use it, but to counter this... Oh, right now, okay, I was like, wait, why am I shocked? Because I don't have power charges. So to counter this, we take this node up here, this mastery. Cannot be shocked while at maximum power charges. Now, as you saw right now, I actually did get shocked because we're not at maximum power charges, but normally when you're mapping and fighting bosses and stuff, you'll be at maximum power charges all the time, so you won't get shocked. Otherwise, you could go for the Wise Oak. I was rocking the Wise Oak for a very long time. The only problem with this is it's incredibly annoying to try and get all the resistances like balanced, or to at least even get cold res as your highest. It's tough. To me, it was more of a headache than anything, not really worth it. You could use a Sulfur Flask if you're not using Bottled Faith. It just does a lot of damage too. You could use Azirius Promise instead of one of these. Also just gives you damage. And for a while I was rocking a Gold Flask because why not? You could also go for like a Jade Flask, but lots of options, whatever you feel like. Another fun flask option, in case you don't want to go for Herald of Ice like I've been doing, you can use Aureus End for those elemental explosions instead. I didn't come up with this idea, I found out about it through somebody else's video, Prisma Sigma, and he's got a whole different take on the build, and I think it does more damage, so maybe you'd be interested in checking that out. I'll leave a link to that also in the description. Yeah, I think that covers all of this gear. Let's go over my jewels now. So for the Watcher's Eye, what I got here is a 15% damage taken while affected as clarity, or while affected by clarity, recouped as mana. And this is great. It makes it so that when you take damage, whoops, let me turn clarity on here. When you take damage, your mana will go back up. We don't have mana issues while we're just mapping, but sometimes during boss fights, you could technically run out. And so it can be useful if you do get hit by a boss attack. It'll give you your mana back. However, what it also lets you do is it lets you do no regen maps, which is sweet. Especially with all of this like increased map effect modifier stuff that we get on our trees these days. It's very easy to also get that players can't recover 60% of life for ES and mana or whatever, and that gets scaled up to 100%, so you're not regenerating mana at all. This Watcher's Eye solves that. It's still not like the most comfortable thing in the world, but it actually, you can still do those maps, which is pretty nice. Then we've also got crits penetrate 10% of elemental resistances while affected by Zealotry. We are using Zealotry, so we just get 10% more damage from that, or however much it actually amounts to. So that's Watcher's Eye. The most important thing is the mana mod though. Then, let's see, we got a Natural Affinity here, which grants us Nature's Patience. You'll notice mine has Corrupted Blood on there. That is expensive. That is the most recent upgrade I made for this build, and the last one I'm making for this build because I'm benching this build now. This was 20 Divines. Without this, it's like 10. You'll notice I tried corrupting my own, but no luck. Oh, my game froze. That's fun. Okay, we crashed. Okay, we're back. So, what Nature's Patience does is it puts Grasping Vines on you when you're standing still, and then you do more damage based on how many Grasping Vines you have, and you take less damage also. And you can only have 10 of them at a time. You'll notice here I have 10 because I'm not moving. So basically, you just do a lot more damage when you're standing still, which is great to know for bosses. Also, you can even benefit from that if you're cycloning on the spot like where the boss is. You could still benefit from the grasping vines, but as soon as you move, then you start losing the stacks. So lots of damage gained from that. Rational Doctrine. This is a later purchase as well. The important mod here is that you get to create profane ground on enemies, or like on the ground whenever you crit, and that makes it so that enemies take more crits. That's basically all it is. We're also rocking Cluster Jewels, as you'll have noticed over here and here. The important mods on here are Blanketed Snow and Cult of the Core. Cult of the Core is the most important one of them all. Cult of the Core gives you 1% increased cold damage per 25 int, so you just get a ton of cold damage because of this. And then Blanketed Snow just does Ellie Pen against chilled enemies, kind of like the Zealotry mod that we have over on our Watcher's Eye. So yeah, so just getting those two mods on your Cluster Jewels is really nice. You want the 8 passive skills with the increased cold damage. And then if you can get like int on here as well, that'd be great. The third mod we don't really care about. I'm using it, but you don't need it. This one is a little bit different because these are expensive, Cult of the Core and Blanket of Snow. I got Prismatic Heart. This helps me get my resistances that I need. We're rocking 2 split personalities. We want the +5 int on there is the most important thing, and then +5 max ES is great. That's the ideal, but you could go for something else for cheaper early on. Like I was using int and evasion early on, and that was like 5 chaos, whereas this is like 1 divine or something like that. 2 of those, you slot them here. You have this crazy pathing so that you benefit a ton from the split personality, which basically, if you don't know, it scales your int and maximum energy shield from this jewel based on how many nodes are along the way until it's connected to where it is. So that's why you have this crazy pathing where you want to, you might think like, oh, why don't you just take this and save a bunch of points? This is why, because you get a lot of extra int and energy shield from these. I've got a Fertile Mind over here. This just transforms this int into this dex into int, and then also gives you 24 int. Ideally, I would put it here and get a bit more, but if I do that, I'm actually under my minimum dexterity requirement by like 3, so that's unfortunate. I don't know, if I had some extra dex somewhere, a little tiny bit more, then I could do that, but I can't, so here we are. And then Brute Force, this converts this strength over here into int. Strength is not as big of a deal on this build. It's not too hard to get. Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame. So my Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame combo that I am rocking is Ambush and Assassinate. And this makes it so that enemies get crit more when they are low life or full life, and crits have Culling Strike. That's whatever, we already had Culling Strike elsewhere in the build, but it's fine. So this is just like a lot of extra damage against enemies that are on low life. Right now I've got this set for not low life, but look, when we're on low life, we're doing literally more than double damage as opposed to when the enemies are not full life, but you know, between full life and half. So that's really good. Alternatively, you could use something called, well, the 2 Forbidden Flesh and Flame combo for Deadly Infusion, which is slightly cheaper than Ambush and Assassinate, and that would also be a decent amount of damage, and that would have like a 100% uptime because it just increases your crit basically. Because yeah, one of the things is we are not crit capped. We have 67% chance crit when the enemies are on like not low life, and then when we are on low life it's 100%, and it is because of that Ambush and Assassinate thing. That's it for jewels, that's it for that. Anything important here about the tree? We get all the power charges that we can get. We're not exactly stacking power charges, but we get all the ones that are available. What else? Chaos Inoculation, we talked about that. 10% of leech is instant. You want this pretty early on because that'll give you a ton of leech. This mana, we get mana reservation efficiency here, as well as this wheel here. We get some crit over here, and then crit multi against unique items, unique enemies. Here we get a really cool node. This one here, 30% increased defenses while wielding a staff. That's awesome because we are obviously wielding a staff, and that just gives us a ton of energy shield and evasion. This one here, okay, this is important. 50% of your energy shield is added to your stun threshold. So this makes it so that instead of your stun being calculated based on how much life you had, which is 1 when you get hit, now it'll be counted by 50% of your ES, which is a substantial amount more. So you get stunned way less often by having this. Here we get this mastery here, which makes it so you can have an extra intensity stack. This is for our single target setup. We are using intensity, so if you notice at the top here, we get 4 intensity now. Normally it would be 3. And that just makes it so that like when you're at 4, then your skill is doing more damage, has less AoE, but it's doing more damage. I think that's it for gear and the passive tree. I guess I could go over this real quick. So yeah, we already talked about Escape Artist. That just gives you a lot of energy shield. And then over here we get Soul Drinker, which gives us a lot of leech and makes it so that while we are leeching, and if we reach the top of our energy shield pool, we are still counting as having leech, which is beneficial because we can use energy leech support, which just makes us do more damage while we're leeching. And so that'll still count while we have full energy shield. And then what else? Polymath, this just lets you get a ton of energy shield and mana recovery whenever we're mapping, because every time you kill a monster, you just get tons and tons and tons of ES back. You'll notice like while I'm mapping, I am just cruising through everything in my ES. So if I get hit, it just goes from like 50 to whoop, back to 100 in a split second. Really nice. Same with mana. One step ahead. This is kind of personal preference. You could go for Heartstopper instead. In fact, Kelvynn kind of recommends going Heartstopper and then maybe switching to one step ahead when you feel like it. This is definitely tankier, but this felt better for me. A bit more action speed, and most importantly, like you can't get slowed or frozen when you have that node, so that's pretty sweet. And even like those petrification statues in T17s, like I had mentioned earlier, they don't affect you, so it's a nice node to have. Very comfy. This is tankier, I suppose, but this is very comfy. I like it. I believe that's everything I need to talk about on the tree. Grab some attributes over here because we are stacking int. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention on the boots, we have Whispers of Doom anointed on here, which lets us apply an additional curse, so we can have 2 curses. Until I anointed that, I was just picking it up myself up here. But this saves 4 passive points, so it's really useful, really worth getting. Let's talk about our skill gem setup, and then that'll be it. For our Cyclone setup, we've got Castle Channeling, Cyclone level 1, okay, this is important because it costs less mana. Cast while channeling level 15, okay, this is super important. Do not go over level 15 because anything over level 15 will make it so that we are casting our Ice Storm too often. And if you're casting your Ice Storm too often, you can only have a maximum of 5 Ice Storms running at a time. That's just like hard-coded into the game. So if you cast more often than like when you have level 15, what ends up happening is you cast too many of them and they override each other and you actually have a DPS loss. So don't do that. Don't get Awakened cast while channeling either. Stick to regular one, level 15. You can put quality on it. Increase crit damage for more damage. Power charge on crit so that we get power charges whenever we crit. So this is what's going to keep us at like full power charges all the time. And then it does more damage based on how many power charges we have. So excellent. Energy leech, I went over that. Gives us leech, gives us damage while leeching. And then inspiration. This makes it so that our mana costs are lower and gives us crit. So that's in our one staff. And then in our other one, we have power charge on crit again. We have concentrated effect. So more damage, but less AoE. Intensify, so that's the thing I was talking about with these stacks, where as you're standing still and casting, you get more intensity. If you move around, you start losing it. And then Inspiration again for the same mana and crit reasons. Increase crit damage because damage. And finally Cold Pen. This could be Awakened Cold Pen instead, but it's just a lot of damage. In our helmet, we've got Cast While Damage Taken, level 1 with Frost Bomb and Cold Snap, all level 1, and then a level 20 Bone Chill. This just makes it so that the enemies get all chilled and stuff, I don't know. And then Frost Bomb is good because it applies cold exposure, and Cold Snap is good because you can get frenzy charges when you kill enemies in this area that it creates. You won't get frenzy charges when you're bossing, but for mapping, it's, you know, why not? Extra damage. Level 1 cast when damage taken, level 1 Immortal Call. This makes it so that we take less damage while this is active for like a second, and then more duration, as high as we can get. I have it at level 18 because that's how much strength I can support it with. This just makes the Immortal Call last a little bit longer. We've also got Clarity in here. You could fit this wherever you can fit it. Any of these gems, where they go doesn't matter between the helmet, the boots, and the gloves. So, you know, you fit them wherever you can. And then in the boots, Zealotry, Frost Blink, Discipline, or Val Discipline, Herald of Ice. So Zealotry just gives us a lot of crit and more spell damage. Frostblink, that's our skill that lets us go around. I tried Frostblink of Wintry Blast with like a full 4-link setup to make it really fast, and it still sucked, so I don't recommend it. Discipline, we've got Val Discipline. So Discipline by itself just gives us like 1,000 energy shield, I think. Yeah, 1,500 energy shield right now. But with the Val Discipline, I really like that because it's an extra little button that if you get hit, for example, like during the boss, you can just hit the Val Discipline button and then your ES will regen right back up, as long as you're not in a no regen map. Herald Device, This is like my own personal choice. I really like playing with heralds in my builds because I just love the explosions and the colors. It just makes it so much more fun and satisfying. And once I added that into the build, I was like, oh my god, this build is so much more fun now. So totally worth it in my opinion, but it is a DPS loss as opposed to like using something else, I don't know, skitter bots or something. What Kelvynn actually recommends is you don't take Discipline, you don't take Herald of Ice, and instead you take Purity of Elements, which is what I was doing early on, but I don't know. I just like the explosions too much. And this would absolutely help with getting your resistances capped though much more easily, so yeah, it's a good idea. For the links in our chest, we have cast some damage taken, level 1, with Ball Lightning, level 1, and then we have a level 20 Hex Touch. So this is going to be our curse setup. So level 1 cast some damage taken, level 1 Ball Lightning, level 20 Hex Touch, level 20 Frostbite, level 20 Punishment, and then level 20 Culling Strike if you can fit that in. If you got a 6 link. If you got a 5 link, drop this. If you don't have Whispers of Doom, drop Punishment. You could also swap Punishment out for LE Weakness if you wanted. Punishment, if you don't know, makes it so that enemies take more damage when on low life, so we're really leaning into that low life thing. Hex Touch, Frostbite, Punishment, just lots of damage. Ball Lightning because it's good at applying curses. That's it. That's it, I think. I think I've covered everything I need to. The build is really fun. I've been able to do T17s, I've been able to do some Ubers. I did Uber Cortex, I tried Uber Cyrus, got him to the last phase, then proceeded to die a bunch of times in a row in the last phase, sometimes off screen. You know how it is with Cyrus. Yeah, I'm really impressed with this build, considering what it can do with basically a 0 divine budget early on and then progressing it. You can really take it really far. At this point, I've put in probably a bit over 100 divines into the build if you were to try and like sell everything off. Maybe even more than that if I'm not counting things properly. I don't know what the prices are like right now. But yeah, it's a really smooth build. I highly recommend it to anyone who likes these cast while cycloning builds. Like cast on crit, like Ice Nova and Ice Spear and all those things. But yeah, it's super smooth, very fun, can do basically any mod. You can use Soul of the Brine King first if you're getting stunned a lot early on. I would use that, but then I swapped to this, and Soul of Yugul for like less curse effect, and you could technically do reflect maps with that if you go ahead and take this mastery. Here, the 60% reduced reflected elemental damage taken. You'd have to drop something else. I don't know what I would drop. Maybe this, and then drop the Flask, the Vinktars, and put something else. Maybe. Like I said, smooth build, really fun. Recommend it. Maybe for next league, if we get a next league. Yeah. Hope you like the build, hope you like the video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys next time.